Hi everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So we are in a different location today. We are on the Queen Mary up near, we're on Long Beach and I'm with Maverick and Michelle. So we are just going to wander around the Queen Mary today so you guys can come along with us, and then we're doing a ghost tour, which I don't know, I'm kind of scared about. Are you guys?
Yeah. I'm scared.
How about you, Maverick?
Ooh, spooky.
I might not be that scary, but we'll see. So let's get started, and I don't know, we'll just wander around the boat.
Officer's headquarters or is it the captain's headquarters?
They went to both.
We went to who?
What do you guys
Run!
Run! He's gone! You're free!
The sounds. Okay, I'll connect you. Okay. I'll connect you. That's how they connect into like Bluetooth, right?
Yeah.
I have things that I'm like, I totally for this, but when you have stuff like this, right? Why the fuck is this here? Just put it away. This isn't my house.
This is history.
I know. Shit.
ship. So the area that we're in was originally for third-class passengers. And take a look at the staircase here, and you notice the stairs here in third class are a bit steeper than the ones that you find in the middle of the ship that were for the first-class passengers. But remember, not only are the stairs steeper, we're in an area of the ship where the ride would be rougher. And so I'm sure that you can imagine when they were traveling through rough seas, it would be difficult to safely go up and down this staircase. I mentioned that we know of instances where people fell as a result of the rough weather. There were several cases where people fell down this very staircase and lost their lives as a result of those injuries. Imagine like a ship goes like this all of a sudden. Imagine we get on the staircase. Down below the water line in watertight compartments. But I wanted to show you what one of these watertight doors looks like, because there's one of them aboard the ship where over the years in the vicinity around that watertight door, we've heard many reports of paranormal activity. It just happens to be hatch door number 13. And I assure you that we did not change the number to try to make it seem creepier. It was always door number 13. And we believe that we may know why we hear all these reports of paranormal activity associated with that hatch door. Because when the ship was still an ocean liner in 1966, the Queen Mary entered a dense fog one night. So the captain ordered all of these watertight doors to be closed as a precautionary measure. After executing the captain's orders, they noticed on the indicator panel up at the bridge of the ship that all of the watertight doors had successfully closed, except for door number 13. And so several crew members went to investigate what was wrong with the hatch. And when they arrived there, they made a terrible discovery, because they found another member of the ship's crew pinned inside of that watertight door. These hatch doors would shut with 700 pounds of hydraulic pressure per square inch. Remarkably, the 18-year-old crewman trapped inside was alive when they found him. So they tried to help him, and they opened up the hatch. And unfortunately, that just allowed his massive injuries to bleed, so that he died very quickly after that. But as I mentioned, that is an area of the ship where we have heard many reports over the years. People have told us that near door number 13, they have seen someone who looks like a crew member, all dressed in coveralls with grease or oil on his hands and his face. We've had people tell us that while walking near door number 13, that they have heard someone calling out to them, or that they felt someone tap them on the shoulder, or grab them by the arm, only to turn around and see an empty passageway behind them. We've had people tell us that while walking through that area of the ship, that they've heard someone whistling at them, or that they felt someone playing with their hair. There was a woman on one of my tours who told me that when she first arrived at door number 13, she felt her husband put his arm around her. And she said she was standing like that for 5 minutes before she realized she could see her husband over there, standing on the other side of the room. Photographs of the people who died aboard the Queen Mary during her ocean liner years. So here you can see some of these individuals that we have been talking about on the tour today.
You're first, bro. A priest.
Well, he looks in
It looks like somebody's. He looks like he should be a president.
What's that one?
Found it.
Where do we go?
Somebody farted.
I know, it smells like that. I know, I'm getting out of here. I wish it was me. I take good credit for that. I think it's just actually.
Watch your phone door and let it go in there.
Yeah, for real.
We'll never get it.
I don't know how.
Is this where somebody?
Somebody hung him.
I'll tell you, but no, that's not the story. It's worse.
Oh.
There's a ghost here.
Where we are. If you look behind me, you look in this direction here, you'll notice how the hull on both sides narrows to a point, and that is because we are as far forward as you can possibly go aboard the ship. We are all the way at the bow point of the Queen Mary. This room that we are in was known as the bosun's store, or the rope locker. You notice this shaft in the center here? It goes down 3 levels below where we are. It goes all the way up to the forecastle of the ship. That is the outside bow area, which is typically where mooring operations would have taken place. So that's where they would tie the Queen Mary off to the dock when the ship was in port, using lines or hawsers, the enormous rope that you can see laying around. Since that disaster, in areas like this, near the bow of the Queen Mary, we have had people tell us that they have heard loud crashing sounds. People describe hearing metal tearing apart and water pouring in, as if they are describing hearing the sounds of that collision years and years later. We've had people tell us that in these areas of the ship, they have heard what sounds like a tool of some kind pound against the outside steel hull of the ship. Some have even mentioned that they thought it sounded like it was in Morse code, as if someone was trying to tap out a message and communicate that way. And then we have had others who have told us that in these areas of the ship, they have heard men's voices yelling and screaming for help. Yeah, in fact, I think it's kind of fun.
That's where we started.
Where's it?
It's back there.
That room that we just passed by up the corridor there, room B340. That was one of the rooms that when the Queen Mary first began to operate as a hotel here in Long Beach, they would rent that room out as one of our hotel rooms. But not long after they started renting out room B340, the hotel front desk began to notice a consistent pattern of reports and complaints coming from that room. Guests who spent the night overnight in room B340 often complained of a loud knocking or banging sound on the door in the middle of the night. Then they'd get up to see who was making that noise, and they could not find anyone anywhere in the passageways. Guests would tell us that the lights would just shut off on them, or that they would turn on in the middle of the night. The same thing would happen with the faucets. Water would just start running in the sink or the bathtub when no one was in the bathroom. Guests would tell us that they found their suitcases moved around or open, that they found their clothes thrown all over. Some of them told us when they woke up in the morning and entered the bathroom, they found their travel bags dumped out all over the floor. One of our housekeepers was cleaning that room. She had just finished making the bed. She stepped into the hallway for a moment to get fresh towels, and when she came back into the room again, she found all the blankets and sheets pulled off of that bed and thrown onto the floor. And so eventually they just decided that they'd heard so many consistent complaints out of that room that they should stop renting it. And that was what they did. They shut the room down, they took it off the hotel registry. They were curious about all this activity, and so they started to look through the ship's history and dig into the records. And there they noticed that when the Queen Mary was still an ocean liner in 1966, there was a woman named W.T. Barry who was traveling alone in that room. And she reported waking up suddenly in the middle of the night one evening after feeling all of her blankets pulled off of her. She sat up in bed and saw a man standing above her. She screamed for help. She reached over and hit the button to call for a steward, and when she turned back in the direction of the man once again, he was gone. Now the steward was right up the passageway here. He was near enough by that he had heard her scream, so he was at her room in moments, and he could see that entranceway the whole time, but he never saw anyone exiting or entering the room. And then they pieced together one more part to the story that took them a little while to figure out, only because the room had changed numbers over the years. It used to be designated B226 and then was later changed to B340. But once they realized that that was actually right there in the same room aboard the ship, they noticed that in 1964, a passenger had been found dead inside that very room.